All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our first semi-annual meeting of 2021. I look forward to welcoming everyone back in the auditorium, hopefully in September when we do our next meeting. Hopefully we'll have everybody back in here by then. I feel sure we will. We usually have over 100 people in here. Right now we just have 5. A couple of spectators. Daniel, who is helping me today, who always does. Miss McCullers is here today, and she's going to come up here in a second. And Miss Peg Bedini is here from Endowment. And we also have from our management company, David Ammons, our CEO, and Kyle Dilday, our COO. So they're both here. I want to make sure, you may not see them in the picture, but they are both here beside me and here supporting me. So I want to make sure you know they're in attendance. I'm going to have Miss McCullers come up for a few minutes, and then I'll do a presentation and answer some resident questions.
Good afternoon, Springmore. My name is Judy McCullers, and I'm the president of the Springmore Residents Association. Today is an occasion when in pre-pandemic times, we would, as Brandon observed, be meeting in a full auditorium, an auditorium filled with people from both sides, from north and south, and from the villas and houses. Every seat would be filled, and the residents would be chatting and laughing and enjoying tasty refreshments provided by dining services. And each of us would be holding a raffle ticket handed to us as we entered. A free raffle ticket for chances to win nice prizes donated by First Citizens Bank and selected by video. And someone early on would read the fire alarm instructions, and we'd all lip sync along and laugh a little. And earlier, before COVID-19 changed all our lives, we came to this auditorium for Residents Association meetings each month for programs that informed and entertained and brought us together. South Village residents and North Village residents and Villa residents and house residents would fill every seat except the front row where the newcomers would sit and be introduced to the long-timers. Residents Association meetings in the past united us, and we have missed them sorely. But today, one full year since our last Residents Association meeting, we are together virtually. The Springmore Residents Association is pleased to offer today one of our most important meetings thanks to dear old Channel 1341. This is the semi-annual meeting of residents, management, and the board of directors. Thank you for joining us. The purpose of this twice-yearly meeting, March and September, is to give residents a chance to ask management and the board of directors pertinent questions that affect our lives in the Springmore community. In preparation for this question and answer session, residents submitted their questions in writing some weeks ago, thereby giving management an opportunity to research queries that might require complex responses. This year, I believe we have 12 questions. These were submitted, as I said, in advance, in writing by residents. Now, I will turn the remainder of this session over to Brandon Hare, Executive Director. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCullers. I appreciate it. I was just sitting here thinking when Ms. McCullers was talking of how long it's been since we've had a resident association meeting, and I remember exactly where I was when I first heard about the first case of coronavirus. And a year ago, I was planning a trip to go to Seattle, Washington to see my sister. And I was at a conference, and we'd first heard about the first case actually outside of Seattle. And the first thing I thought was, well, it can't be that bad. It'll get better. It's just going to be a couple of cases. And as time went on, there's a few more people started to get it, and it hadn't made it down south yet. And I said, well, I'll still go to Seattle. I said, selfishly, the only thing I was worried about was residents finding out I went to Seattle to travel, and I came all the way back to North Carolina. Well, quickly I found out how serious coronavirus was and how quickly they refunded my money for airplane tickets and hotel stays, and how the next year of our life would change just dramatically. So after a year, I am glad that things are getting better, and we'll talk more about some good news that we just received today at the end of the presentation. But I thought I'd recap 2020, and instead of focusing on all the bad things we had to deal with for the year, I thought we'd focus on some positive things that we did that maybe some people didn't recognize or forgot, or maybe just for a nice uplifting moment to see that 2020 wasn't as terrible as we may remember it. So I'd like to start off by a quote I saw that I thought was really interesting and really summed up the way I felt all last year. It says, so far, 2020 is like looking both ways before crossing the street and then getting hit by an airplane. And that's why I felt every day. We were so cautious. We tried to plan and look and do, and out of the blue, something would happen. Just totally just knock us down. We get something fixed, it was something else would happen. As Dr. Edmondson said, it's like playing whack-a-mole in an arcade, just trying to hit different moles on the head, and different ones pop up all the time. So that was the feeling for a year, and we got through it, but it was very much like this quote right here. I thought I'd start off with some terminology that some of us may not have even heard before, or maybe not have even thought about in a long time, and how it kind of related to our whole year. The first one was COVID-19. I first heard that. I was like, is that the same as the coronavirus, or is it different? And come to find out it's the same thing, and I use that term all the time because it's shorter to type COVID-19 than it's a coronavirus. So interesting term. Epidemic. I learned an epidemic is before a pandemic, so I guess we experienced an epidemic before the pandemic. Hadn't heard that in a while. Flattening the curve, trying to get our numbers down and cases down. Governor Cooper liked to use the term dimmer switch a lot, which I always thought was interesting. I kind of relate that to him trying to flatten the curve of the dimmer switch. Not sure if it worked or not, but that was the term he used. Herd immunity. I always pictured a bunch of cows just in a big herd, just walking around a field grazing, but we come to realize that that's what needs to happen for all of us to get back to a normal life by us becoming vaccinated. So herd immunity is what we're striving for. Immune compromised. Same thing as comorbidities or pre-existing conditions, but immune compromise was pretty much meant if you were compromised in any way, in that aspect, that if you got the coronavirus, it may affect you more than others. So it's an interesting term. Isolation, which sounds so terrible. We come to a wonderful community like Springmore not to be isolated at home anymore and have this social aspect of our life, and we have to be isolated. Isolation is when somebody was actually exposed and had COVID. They had to isolate themselves for 14 days. That was the requirement we had to follow. So they had to stay in their room, and we had to deliver everything to them. Self-quarantine, that's a little better than being in isolation, but not really. You didn't actually have the coronavirus. You perhaps were exposed, or you were being tested to see if you did have it. But unfortunately, you had to follow the same guidelines, same rules. Couldn't leave, food delivered, mail delivered. So those were tough times when we had to do that. Then we got pandemic, which the coronavirus, COVID-19, the virus, as some people call it, that all turned into a pandemic, the worst we've seen in almost 100 years. Social distancing. interesting. For somebody like me that's kind of touchy-feely and outgoing, social distancing was hard. I wanted to shake hands or pat somebody on the back or give somebody a hug, and that was kind of awkward until the fact that we knew we were not supposed to touch anybody and stay 6 feet apart, so I learned that really quick, but very awkward to social distance for us extrovert people. PPE. We have a lot of acronyms in long-term care or retirement living, DON, Director of Nursing, SNF, Skilled Nursing Facility, AL, Assisted Living, can go on and on, but PPE standing for Personal Protective Equipment, and that's something that we had to wear at all times if we were dealing with somebody that had COVID-19. Looks like you're in a hazmat suit, but it was important that we had that, and we were thankful to have plenty of PPE the entire time. Outbreak, which sounds terrible, was considered only 2 cases in a nursing home was considered an outbreak. So if you're on an outbreak status, it had a lot of ramifications that were negative. So such a strong term for just 2 cases. We found out cluster ended up being 5 or more people, and that was more used on college campuses. Didn't really hear that much in the long-term care retirement setting. That was a new one to me. Contact tracing sounds like something from NCIS, and sometimes it felt like that. We really had to go in depth with contact tracing to go back and see how people were touched and affected, and if somebody was possibly compromised or possibly exposed to someone else, to see who we needed to test, and it was a constant mystery you're trying to always work out. 3 W's, wait, wear, wash. Goodness, if I heard that again. It's like we always heard that. Mandy Cohen's claim to fame, 3 W's. Zoom. I'd never heard of Zoom before COVID-19. I'd always heard of Skype. Skype, and I never understood. Skype had been around years before Zoom. It did the same thing, and I kept wondering, well, why is everybody using Skype? Why is everybody using Zoom? So I'm sure there's much more to it than that, but Skype looked like they lost out a huge opportunity, and Zoom came in, and it seems like they took technology they had for at least 10 years in advance, and I don't ever hear people say Skype anymore, so everything's Zoom. Unprecedented times. It's a term I used a lot. Probably threw it around more than I should when I didn't know the answer to something. I said, well, it's unprecedented times, I'm not sure. There's unprecedented times, we can't do that. So that was a term that was used a lot, and it was unprecedented times when I look back on it. Super spreader sounds awful, and a lot of people had that super spreader campaign rallies, sporting events. I think of college kids with super spreader. So that's an interesting term that I've never heard before. And lastly, remote learning. So if y'all have any grandchildren, maybe heard your kids talk about remote learning and maybe how much they loved it or how much they did not like it. My son was not a fan of remote learning, neither was my wife, so they're glad to be back in school. But the question that I have to this day is, will there ever be a snow day again? Now that we've established remote learning, will kids ever have a day off of the snow again? Guess we'll have to wait and see. So anyway, that's some terminology to get us to where we're at, and I wanted to highlight a couple of areas that I felt did a fantastic job, and kind of go into some of the terminology that we'll use in here. Marketing was something that was an area that did amazing last year, even with everything that went on we just talked about. We maintained a 95% occupancy throughout the entire year. Occupancy rates for continuing care retirement communities like Springmore averaged about 85 to 88% throughout the year, and we were able to stay about 10 percentage points above that. So that was really amazing that we were able to stay at our budgeted occupancy all year long when other communities were not as successful. We had 42 new IL move-ins and 1 direct AL admission. That's right about the same amount of move-ins we had last year, which is really amazing as well. We received 33 waitlist deposits, received over 750 leads. Those were down a little bit from last year, but we still have a waiting list of over 250 people and about 40 people that are move-in ready to this day. So that's fantastic. Something new we had to do through Zoom was virtual tours. We conducted 12 virtual tours. There was a time when no one could come into Springmore and only leave on special occasions for doctor appointments and essential business, that we had to do virtual tours to to ensure that residents were still interested in Springmore, and many of them are here already today. So that was something new for us. We did a direct mail piece in February and October. That's something we always do to just get our name out there. We send it to people in certain area codes that are qualified to get interest, and that had paid off for us. So we continued that started right before COVID and even continued in October. We used this opportunity to refresh our website. We posted over 30 blogs on social media. We had a lot of good stories come out of last year, and we were able to highlight them on our social media blogs. And lastly, we held 2 parades that were organized by marketing that were both highlighted on the local news. Marketing worked with Greystone neighborhood to have a Halloween parade and a Christmas parade, and both were picked up on the news, which is really neat. So a lot of good publicity and positive press during this time. It wasn't all doom and gloom, and marketing did a great job. As far as buildings, as y'all know, we were working on the main kitchen. It's about a half-year project. We was able to finish that up during COVID. At one point, we were delivering all the meals out of a remote kitchen. It was pretty hectic for a while, and we finally got back in the kitchen, but renovated the entire kitchen during that time. That's all finished, beautiful, brand new. We remodeled the business office and conference room. If you hadn't been up to the business office, stop by and see us, and we'll show you what we've done in there. It looks really nice, and updated that area to match the hallway and the admin suite up there. We repainted all of South Village. So we did the houses and villas in 2019, did all of South Village last year, and we're budgeted to do North Village this year. So the whole campus will be repainted after this year. We refurbished 45 apartments for the new resident move-ins. See, before we had about 45 move-ins, so all those got refurbished apartments. We installed new carpet and repainted many stairwells in North and South Village, and we're finishing them up now. So if you take the stairs, which I try to do more often, you'll see they're lighter and brighter and up to date. And lastly, we completed over 10,000 work orders. So anytime you call Randy or you submit something for a staff member through Works Hub, we try to get it done, and Randy's staff did over 10,000 work orders. Wellness was something we had to get very, very creative with this year, with not being able to gather for over 4 months. Carrie Ritchie and her team created 37 fitness videos that played on 1341. So a lot of fitness classes she had, and they're up on the portal that you could watch over and over. But 37 classes. We loaned out exercise equipment to residents when there was a no gathering in effect. You can see how many dumbbells and exercise balls we loaned out to people to stay active. We were able to hold in-class fitness for 44 out of the 52 weeks of the year. So they were about there, so the majority of the year we were able to have in-person fitness classes, but we had to get really creative with how we did that. And most times there was only 8 people in an exercise class in the great room. They were sectioned off in squares. They could be 6 feet apart. But even during those 44 weeks in reduced numbers, we still had 1,644 classes taught and almost 10,000 total residents in attendance. Exactly 9,934. So still a great turnout. We had the very faithful people that continue to come every day. And then lastly, Carrie played a huge role in conducting our first COVID vaccine clinic in December. And with our first clinic, we had over 95% participation for IL residents and skilled nursing residents. 461 IL residents received their first vaccine, and that's amazing. So we're at 99.9% now. Yeah, but 95 during the first one. So Carrie played a huge part in that. So I want to thank her for that. Dining services. We did a lot in dining that you'll probably remember. I remember this more than anything is within 48 hours, we went from full dining, everything open, to all deliveries. And the day in between the 48 hours, that we had the option of doing takeout. So it went from full service to takeout to all delivery. So 48 hours, we totally revamped how we delivered over 1,000 meals a day. We were required to deliver meals for over 4 months. For 4 months, that was the only option we had, and during that time, we delivered 98,465 meals to all of Springmore. So that's 3 meals to supportive living, 3 meals to the health center, and then the meals you had delivered within your independent residencies. During the year of 2020, we had a total of 277,678 meals delivered, and that included the grill and the bistro as well. And we converted all dining room staff into delivery staff during quarantine. So they had to quickly learn a different role and a delivery method system, different than waiting on tables, so now they're well-versed in both. As a few more things I want to highlight, we were able to hire a new executive chef during this time, and we hired our first ever sous chef. And I think everybody knows Karen. She's doing really well and working good with all the chefs, and I know the residents have been excited to have her. We conducted 3 chef demo events during COVID. We were not able to have our spring gala, so we had autumn harvest soiree, which was really neat. We had it set up in 7 different stations outside of North and South Village, had a large tent, and people were able to socially distance for the most part, and be outside and be around each other and socialize. So that was a really neat thing that we did, and it was very creative by Dining Services in replacement of the spring gala. And then in place of our annual Christmas gala, we had a week-long celebration of events that we did each day: tree lighting, pictures with Santa Claus, gingerbread social, and even the reindeer romp, which was like a progressive dinner, which was really neat. And even during the holidays, we made sure that everybody was touched in a special way. Even we had to do deliveries. We did Mother's Day and Father's Day deliveries, pastry box and s'mores for the guys, and chocolate eggs and cupcakes during Easter. So tried to make sure we made the holidays as positive as possible, even when everyone was in self-quarantine mode. Housekeeping. With the help of housekeeping and maintenance, we installed 85 hand sanitizers all throughout Springmore. There's one at every door, every elevator, everywhere. So we installed them all over, which was really great. I know they're still used to this day and probably will be used continuously. We implemented new mist sprayers for extra cleaning after an event. So if we had a group in here, we'd have one of the housekeeping people come in before the next group come in and spray it down and do some other cleaning. We increased our frequency of cleaning in all common areas and in the health center. That helped out a lot, and I think things have been as clean as ever here. We want to keep up with that. It's really looked good when making rounds and looking at areas. I know Kyle comes over and does rounds every so often, and he commented how clean and how nice things looked, and I think that really has a lot to do with increasing the frequency of the cleaning we did during COVID, so we want to keep that up. Maintain all housekeeping and laundry duties, just like normal. Didn't stop at all. And we had 2 employees celebrate their 37th anniversary here at Springmore in 2020. So 2 sisters that y'all know, Barbara and Sandra, in housekeeping. 2 original staff members, been here since day one, 37 years last year. So that's a huge accomplishment. Operations, last few slides. We achieved a positive total net income for the year. Total budgeting expenses came in under budget. That includes 13 out of the 14 cost centers, which is amazing. We were able to reduce employee turnover and overtime year over year from 19 to 20. So even in tough time where we had a lot of call-outs and struggling for staff, we were still able to reduce both of those key statistics that we really track each year that really have a big financial impact. And we successfully hired 2 department managers during this time, security and transportation, which was Rashad. I think everybody knows him. We also promotion from within, and our director of nursing, Debbie Savinsky. I know that technically, director of nursing is not a department manager within all of Springmore, but I think it's one of the most important positions here at Springmore, and we've been so blessed to have her, and she was a promotion from within too. So I wanted to highlight both of those individuals that we were able to promote. A couple of miscellaneous things before we move on to our questions. We held 29 town hall meetings. 29 of those, I had the privilege of doing each of those and answering, a couple hundred questions probably during that time. I didn't have Daniel research that for me. I did have him research the amount of town hall meetings, though, so that was good. So if y'all get bored and y'all want to binge watch over 24 hours of old town hall meetings, they're on the portal, so have at it. We composed 37 general coronavirus memos for all resident staff and family members. We would do that after every town hall meeting and after every big announcement. And that took a lot of time and effort. They weren't just quick memos. They were very detailed. Some were multiple pages at times. So we had 37 coronavirus memos we did. That's in addition to just little short, sweet memos that we sent out just maybe to a group group of people that maybe had to be isolated for a short amount of time or possible exposure. Those were constantly going out that everybody didn't know about. Springmore staff were chosen for the initial North Carolina DHHS public service announcement, find your spot, get your shot. We had several people in the clinic that was in that, and we had that up on the portal. That was really cool. We had Antoine and it's a second shift nursing supervisor, Lexi in the clinic, and Debbie Savinsky, our DON, in that. During June through December, which we had to do mandatory employee testing. We conducted 3,637 employee COVID tests. So that, for a while, was every week. Then it got to every other week. And that is just for the year, not including what we've done this year all the way up until March, 3,637 tests. And during all that time, those tests were not free. And a lot of the things, the PPE I mentioned, the other stuff we had to have was not free either. We incurred over $635,000 in COVID-related expenses. About half of that was employee testing, which we're going to get reimbursed on, and we have already, and still receiving some more through 2021. But still, with all those incurred extra expenses, we're still able to come under in total expenses for the year, which was amazing. And lastly, thanks to y'all, the wonderful residents here, y'all raised over $67,000 in 2 weeks for employees to receive a much-needed extra money during the pandemic. This was all resident-led, and it was the neatest thing I've ever been a part of here, to see the residents really come together and just want to give to the employees. And we were so thankful for that, including myself. So thank y'all very much. We really appreciate that. And lastly, I'll end on this little quote that I saw that I thought was kind of neat. Because we got some good news today. Even though I finished this up yesterday, I said, too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around. So much of that was lost during COVID. And I'm just so glad to finally be getting back to that. Again, being an outgoing person and an extroverted person, having that is just so important, and having that sense of community is so important. So we've got some new CDC guidelines that came out today that is going to loosen restrictions for people that's been vaccinated. However, we don't have all the details yet of how it affects us as we're considered sometimes a healthcare setting. The health center, we know that's not going to change, but how it's going to affect the independent living. We had a call about that a little while ago. I'm going to read through all the new guidelines today before leaving, and Kyle hosts a Zoom call every Tuesday with the other executive directors, we will discuss that, how we feel we best open Springmore here soon. So hopefully all those wonderful things that we've underestimated for a year, hopefully we'll be back very soon. So we'll be on the lookout for that. All right. So hope y'all found that somewhat interesting. And if you don't mind, we'll just, thank you, David. A little small applause from my audience here, so that's good. We'll go into our resident questions. We did have 12, as Ms. McCullough said. These were all good questions. Some were comments, not all questions. I'll say questions, but we'll address each one, and I want to thank everybody for submitting these. So the first one deals with a patient portal, and there was a resident asking if we could have a patient portal in the Springmore Clinic, similar to an online portal you may have at your doctor's office, like a UNC MyChart, or if Wake Med has one, or Duke has one. And that's a very neat idea. We did some research on it, and those resident portals are geared toward large healthcare providers such as hospitals that I just named. They do have smaller options available for a clinic our size, but they're extremely expensive. Daniel did some research, and for us to have a patient portal to do the things that this person suggested, it would be over $63,000 a year to have that. That's just a software, not a staff member that we'd have to hire to actually do all that, which would be over $100,000. So I think it's a great idea. I think that's something we'll have in the future. I don't think the interest is quite there yet until the expense gets a little lower. We're going to sit tight on that, but again, it's something I think will be very common in the future. The next one is pertaining to font size and font style, font size, and ink density. So have a resident who comments on some of the communications that's sent out from management that is hard to read to the font size, the style, and the ink density. And resident goes on to say that a font serif font is easier to read than sans serif. So this resident I know is very in tune with this and very educational on this. So I have committed to everything that comes out from me that Holly helps me with, resident memos, coronavirus memos, hopefully we won't have to do any more, or just regular memos. We're going to use the serif font with a 14 to 16 font size. And the ink density will be what it is with our printers, but we'll make sure that they're filled up good. And we'll continue to do some research and history for other font style and size for media, such as the portal and the crawl on the TV. So we'll work on that to hopefully you guys can see that a little better. All right, the third question came about as it's been asked to me before, and I guess I never really gave a good answer, but resident always wanted to know why there is no sign at North Village saying North Village when South Village has a sign that says South Village. So after talking with Kyle a little bit and discussing this, he made a good point. I think the term North Village got coined over the years after South Village was constructed. We had to differentiate between the two, and I think we just started saying South Village and North Village. But really, North Village is the Springmore main campus, and that's how it's always been. And it's in some documents it says main campus, some it says North Village. But also the neighborhood has some very strict guidelines of how we can do signs. We actually just had that sign replaced about 3 years ago. It's the original design, but it's metal instead of wood, and it illuminates a little brighter with some LED lights. I feel with the sign we have now, I think it works well. South Village is South Village, and Springmore North Village is our main campus. So we're going to stick with that. I think that's worked well over the years. The fourth comment was from a resident who moved in January of 2020, and he's over in South Village at Creedmoor Apartments. And he states that there has been several separate leaks coming from Creedmoor Apartments through the roofs in their ceiling and light fixtures. And they've stated that patching and painting the areas that leak seem to be temporary and eventually counterproductive, and asked for Springmore's solution to a long-term plan of how this will be fixed. So on January 18th at our first Building and Grounds Committee meeting, Randy Horton, our Director of Maintenance, did report that all the roofs in North and South Village, that they had been painted, repaired, resealed, and they're all up to par now. So they're all fixed. They are flat roofs. We'll have to continue to monitor them. So our short-term plan will be to monitor them since they've been fixed, and long-term will be obviously replace those once the time comes. But they are fixed for now. So that is good. Our fifth question is in regards to noise. This resident asked in his submittal, what is the rule concerning noise made by a resident after 11 p.m.? States noise is going on all night and every night for months and months, and it's disturbing to his sleep and bad for quality of life and not good health. Asked, are there any rules that independent residents must abide by? There's actually no time limit we put on noise or music or anything of that nature, but in the resident handbook in Part 3 under Section X, it does talk about this specific area, and it's titled Noise, Music, and Other Disturbances. And if you just go to that section in your resident manual, it's very helpful. It will go over all of that and basically tells you to be courteous and kind to everyone and be respectful of noises. So check out your resident manual for that. And if this particular thing happens to you or continues for this resident, please reach out to our social worker, Allison Weaver, and we can address this on a case-by-case basis. The next question comes from a resident. It's two-part. The first one deals with scooters, and the other one's the elevator. Resident states she's unable to walk more than a few steps without the aid of a scooter or rollator walker. She uses her scooter to reach the North Village dining room, then parks the scooter and uses her rollator left part in the dining room to reach her table. And this residents experienced difficulty by the way residents park their scooters and feel that some are not properly parking them. So we were able to find, again, our resident manual, which has a ton of good knowledge in there. If you read it, you can find almost anything in there. And we just redid that a couple of years ago and had 2 residents, actually Miss Peg, who's in here with me, she helped overlook that, proofread it, and make sure it was up to par. So we've just recently redone that. But in your resident manual, again, in part 3, there's a whole section about violations of the use of scooters. It even goes into grave detail of proper parking of scooters and power chairs. So if you look at that, section 3, and it's 3, 4, 5, and 6, in section 3 of your resident manual, it will address those things. So just be courteous to everybody that has a scooter or a walker that you are parking it properly so everybody can use their assistive device. And second was a comment about the elevator, number 8 in West Wing, having some operating issues. Nothing major, but a few minor things. I was able to get with Randy about that, and the resident states that some of the lights aren't working on a regular basis, and some of the buttons don't work all the time. I've not heard that before, but Randy and the guys are checking that out. Not been able to find anything, and had that reported to me, so it may have just been a small glitch on that day or a couple of days. But if there's anything like that, please don't wait to this time of the year to let us know that. Make sure that you call maintenance right away so we can jump on it. So hopefully they're minor issues, and I think they're all been taken care of by now. All right, so we had 2 questions submitted by couples, questions 7 and 8, and they pertain to a new meal plan. So before COVID, in late 19, Kyle and I were working on that, and of course had David involved as well, and met with some residents about a possible meal plan. Unfortunately, COVID hit, and that kind of got put by the wayside. I'll admit that was not our top priority at that point. At that point, it was getting food to 600 residents instead of coming up with a new meal plan. But we didn't forget about it, and we continued to work, and throughout the year, met with the Management Advisory Committee, who approved to go to the Executive Committee with a recommendation to go to the board, and the board recommended that management come up with an alternate for a meal plan. So we have that approval by the board, and Kyle and David and I have worked to come up with something, and we'll be sending out some more information in a specific memo later this week. But we are going to offer a second meal credit option. A second meal credit option, and it's going to be very similar to this. That we're going to have if you're on the regular plan, you currently get $464 per resident. The new meal credit option will allow you to have $325 per month. There's going to be some stipulations that go with that, such as only being able to switch that plan once a year, and then the rollover for the meals will not be the same. Again, this is kind of a detailed thing that I want to put in writing that everybody sees instead of talking about it here over 1341. But we do have a second meal credit option that we're going to offer, planning to start in April, with a reduced credit to $325 per person versus $464. And again, I'll get all the details out about that later this week. The other question that came from that is they wanted to know if we've considered an alternate to Sodexo before. And we have. And in 2019, we did a request for proposal from another company. It was a very intense request for proposal, probably the most intense one I've actually ever been through before. And long story short, we decided to stick with Sodexo at that point. We did make some changes and made some staff changes. But we do look at different providers every 5 to 7 years. We're on a just year-to-year basis with Sodexo, so anytime we feel like we need to make a change, we can do that. But we do consider those alternatives. We do that for any contract, landscaping, HVAC, but especially the biggest one, which is our dining service provider. And like I said, we just did that at the end of 2019. So make sure everybody knows about that. And there were several residents and staff that were a part of that. We were able to ask questions and get information. And again, we decided to stick with Sodexo. All right, the 9th question is from a resident. It's a very good suggestion. Request that Springmore employees be consider Springmore employees be given Martin Luther King Day as a holiday. So that's a very good suggestion. We are lucky enough to get 7 paid holidays at Springmore. Not quite as many as government employees, but 7 nonetheless. I'm very thankful for, and that's one more than most CCRCs get throughout the state. We did a quick survey on how many paid holidays other communities get, and most of them get 6, and we get 7. So very thankful for that. However, if we ever consider adding another holiday, which would be nice, I know the employees would like that. That would definitely be the one to consider and would be a great option to do. So in the future, we'll always keep that in consideration to add that as another holiday. All right, number 10, 3 more. So another great suggestion I never thought of. Resident states that there is a lack of safety features at the outside door leading from the North Village mailroom to the breezeway connecting the Stewart Health Center. She urges management to look into installing an automatic door opener with a ramp that residents use with a cane and walker or using a scooter. So that's a very great point that I'll admit I never thought of. So I think that's very plausible. We have our next Building and Grounds Committee meeting next Monday, the 15th. Mr. Marley already has it on the agenda to talk about, and we're going to look to see how we can install an automatic opener and what we need to do to have a ramp there. That's always been kind of a weird area. If y'all know where that is, it's right outside the mailroom in North Village, or I say main campus, where that yellow stripe is, and you're going to step down, but it doesn't have an automatic door opener or a ramp. So we'll look into that. Thank you very much for that suggestion, and I think we can probably find a good solution to make that more accessible to people. The 11th question was just some suggestions for consideration. So I'll talk about these, and I think all these have been handled or are going to be handled. The first one talks about providing a light in North Village in the mailroom area in the evening. I wasn't exactly sure what the resident was referring to, so I called her, and she was, of course, referring to just how dark it used to be in the mailroom. But that's since been resolved. The resident has not been down there in a while, and she admitted to that. We've installed some of those drum lights that you see in the cafe and in the hallway from the Ammons room going into the dining room. We got one between the bathrooms and one in front of the bathrooms near the actual mailboxes, which is illuminated that area much more. So it is much more brighter in there, and it was dark, and that's something that we actually identified whenever we were making rounds. So that's been taken care of. Another suggestion was to provide a paper shredder in the computer room. That's a great idea. So Daniel, if you don't mind getting us a paper shredder, I think that's a very easy accommodation. So we'll get that in as soon as Daniel can get us one for the computer room. And lastly, there was a suggestion to replace the automatic door at entrance 4, and that has been already repaired. I verified that through Randy. As soon as we found out about that, a work order was submitted. One of the 10,000 that he fixed, there was a bad motor, so everything's up and running properly now. So. The last question, it was, again, more suggestions and comments than questions. I had some comments from about 30 residents that had some suggestions and comments about 3 areas, dining, maintenance and housekeeping, and general comments. So I was able to get a little bit more information by talking to these people, either one-on-one or through written communication. I've asked for a little more clarity, and through their responses of about 1/3 of everyone that actually submitted their names on the letter for those issues, I was able to dig down and find what some of the concerns were with dining and in housekeeping, which dealt with a carpet installation issue that I think was was just something Randy had to address with our carpet installation company. But I've met with everybody else it pertains to, and we're looking to make some changes in dining that came up. Our food service committee, we've had them involved with it. We have a new menu coming out here in the next few weeks. And also we have a healthy food option, dining option that was implemented since this was submitted. So we're thinking a lot of these issues will be taken care of. We'll continue to work on during the year. So I appreciate everybody's comments on that, and help me dig a little deeper and drill down to where the issues were, where we could address those. So that is all the questions I have. I really appreciate everybody submitting these. These are always good. Don't ever hesitate to reach out to myself or anybody. As I said, here to help. Don't wait to a meeting of this nature to report something. Use your resident manual. It's got a ton of good information in there. If you're a newcomer, I know we haven't been able to do newcomers as much or have as much interaction. I haven't been able to visit with you as much, but I'm always available here to answer any questions. And again, just refer to your manual, ask your neighbors, and we're all here to help you. So we're hoping 2021 will be much better, and we thank y'all, and we'll see y'all soon. Thank you.